Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Brasscoin and today we are going to talk about ships. Yes, those big metal flotation machines used to transport goods from one half of the world to the other. Man, those things are great.
Actually, Brasscoin, I don't think that's why you invited me here. I thought we were talking about relationships. You know, in The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild.
Who might that be? Oh yeah, it's GalacticThreat. Hey, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Brasscoin. It is an honor. So, going back to that invitation you forwarded me, the reason I'm here was that we are going to talk about the supposed ship, the relationship that Link may have had with the Princess of the Zora, Mipha.
Let's talk about relationships then. Mipha and Link, was it? Well, every good ship has a name, so what do we call this ship then?
How about Mifflink? It's rather popular with the fans, and multiple fan wikis say that that's the name.
Mifflink is a great ship name. But before we set sail on SS Mifflink, we would like to make it clear that the canonicity of Mifflink does not disprove the existence or potential of Z-Link. So all of you Z-Link fans, stay put for a while and hear us out. We believe that Z-Link will likely occur in a platonic sense depending on what Nintendo plans to do with the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Disclaimer aside, let's dive into who Mipha is. Take it away, Galactic.
Mipha. The philosophy behind her character is truly surprising, and it's one of the deepest in thought compared to a lot of the other champions, both in terms of her personality and character design. In Japan, many established archetypes exist, dating back to the industrial era and beyond. One of these archetypes found in Japanese fiction is the Yamato Nadeshiko, translating to flower of Japanese womanhood. The Yamato Nadeshiko trope is known for the characteristics of being, funny enough, graceful and loving. They are portrayed as soft-spoken, gentle, good-looking without being too beautiful or cute, having a medium to a shorter stature, wide eyes, and a predominantly calm demeanor. This trope, specifically, dates back to the days of the samurai in the 1500s, when the daughters and wives of those samurai were expected to be able to handle themselves, trained in self-defense and with the protection of others. These warrior women were often equipped with polearms, lances, nagitanas, and guess what? A trident-like weapon. They were expected to fight with, you guessed it, grace and efficiency, but they were only to be used in the protection of others. If you're in any way familiar with Mipha's character, these points I just brought up are uncannily similar. She fits this trope to a T. Another similarity to the real world is her waterfall climbing ability. She is known as the best at this skill among all Zora, and strangely, swimming up waterfalls isn't quite as unrealistic as one may think, for one fish can also swim up waterfalls here on Earth.
Wait, rewind a little bit. What does she mean by that exactly? In her diary, Mipha records her very first encounter with the young swordsman. She writes, "At the request of Hyrule's king, a group of outsiders came to greet us at the domain. One of them was a Hylian child of only about 4 years of age. His name was Link. He made quite the first impression. He was curious and full of energy, with a ready smile. Are all Hylian children that way? One thing that surely sets him apart is his swordsmanship, which I hear is exceptional. He has even bested adults. He must be somewhat reckless, however, as he was covered in bruises. Wishing to be helpful, I healed his wounds for him. It must have been his first time seeing healing magic as he looked up at me with big round eyes. It was adorable. Is this perhaps the beginning of a young crush?"
After several years, a now grown-up Link returns to Zora's domain. As Mipha says in her diary, she writes, "Link came to visit the domain. It feels like forever since he was here last. He no longer resembles the child I first met. He is now an accomplished knight and keeper of the sword that seals the darkness. I am so proud. However, he hardly speaks anymore, and smiles even more rarely. He is still the kind soul I knew, but something has changed. I asked him if something had happened, if something was wrong. He merely shook his head. Perhaps it is his newly acquired height, but I feel that he is ever looking past me, into the distance beyond." What is interesting to note here is that Link has not yet been chosen to be Zelda's appointed knight. He has, however, shown that he has the sword that seals the darkness, the legendary Master Sword. So, we are probably not far off. What is even more interesting is that Link came to the domain on his own accord. Zelda was not yet with him. He came alone. If we take each page as a separate entry to her diary, as we should, the next event that follows is Zelda's visit to Mipha.
As Champion Mipha's song begins, we see Zelda standing with Mipha, asking her to be the pilot for the divine beast Vah-Ruta. What's important here is that Link does not make an appearance in this memory. Zelda has traveled to Zora's domain to speak with Mipha, with only her guards in tow. Now, before you all conclude that this is Link's memory, which means he was there, watch all of the memories the game has to offer. Actually, of all of the Song of the Champion memories, Link is not present in any of them. They all take place before Link was appointed to be Zelda's knight. In Daruk's memory, Zelda only mentions that she is getting an accomplished knight appointed to her protection, but has not yet been chosen. The memories are more from the perspective of Zelda and the champion with which she is visiting, as opposed to a memory that Link is having. This is evidenced in the adventure log that is seemingly written by Link. In the entries for all of the champion ballad songs, we have the same text, minus the name, that reads, Cass's composition entitled Champion Mipha's Song was so true and moving that it allowed you to visualize a memory from 100 years ago. An important word that sets these 4 memories apart from the rest is visualize. The words remember or recall are not used. They are, however, used in the main questline for Link to recall his own memories. In the entry for locked mementos, we read, visit the various spots shown in the images Zelda left behind to recall your own memories from that era. In this, the word recall is used, indicating that the memory is actually Link's, as opposed to the champion ballad songs, which are merely so good that Link can visualize the memory from which they were written. A memory from Cass's mentor, perhaps? For the rest of the memory quests, the memories are also listed in chronological order, an important piece of information if we are to detail the Miph-Link ship that we see blossom before our eyes, as the very next entry in Mipha's diary is a separate occurrence from Zelda's visit.
Directly after Zelda's visit with Mipha, we have another interesting diary entry. In her diary, Mipha writes, Link came to visit me. It had been ages. I told him that the Lionel of Ploymus Mountain has been terrorizing everyone lately. When I said that, he started walking toward the mountain without a word. Spellbound, I followed him there. When we were almost there, he told me to turn back. He insisted that he would be fine on his own. I stubbornly stayed. While I argued, the Lionel attacked us from behind. I was sure we had met our end. How silly of me to doubt. With a sure hand and a fierce gleam in his eye, Link unsheathed the sword that seals the darkness and defeated our foe. His swordsmanship was swift and graceful. I was fascinated by the beauty of his movements. Though I should have been terrified, I could not help but feel safe in the presence of my dear friend. His kindness and determination to help those in need, his strength and skill, my heart is drawn to his. I'm doomed. The last beautiful move Link performed on the mountain was called a spin attack. Perhaps I will attempt it with my spear. Remember that trope I mentioned earlier? The daughters and the wives of the samurai were expected to be able to handle themselves and were trained in self-defense along with the protection of others. Mipha, with her trident, ascended Mount Ploymus alongside Link. In this instance, Link perfectly embodies the samurai, while Mipha embodies the samurai's wife, even trying to learn from Link, adding his famous spin attack to her arsenal. A move that we see implemented into her moveset in Aged Calamity, after some leveling up against, you guessed it, Lionels. But what does this entry show us about Link? Well, it shows us that without a thought for his safety, he immediately heads for the mountain to dispatch the beast. But why? He doesn't receive a request from the Zora King, asking if they would like him to intervene. He just gets up to slay the beast. What reason is there for this? After all, as a soldier, they are bound to be consequences for taking up a task that didn't affect his post as a soldier of Hyrule. As a soldier, Link would have been required to consult his higher-ups at the castle, as well as the Zora King. However, as a kind-hearted friend, someone who was just in the domain, specifically to visit Mipha, he went to slay the beast. This tells us that Link was more than likely on a leave of some kind that day. A leave probably to afford him some time to set his affairs in order before assuming his role as Zelda's knight not long after.
Mipha's diary comes in clutch again, for in her very next entry she writes, I have at last finished gathering the materials for the armor. I shall start making it at once. This was before the inauguration ceremony, as her diary actually mentions. It is at this point that she has gathered all of the materials needed to make the armor. And with a little speculation on our part, it is around this time that King DOREPHAN would have been aware of Mipha's intentions with Link. I can't imagine Princess Mipha would have been wandering around Zora's domain and the surrounding area collecting supplies for the Zora's engagement armor without first speaking to her father about it. It is something that would require a very specific amount of materials and even more specific type of materials to get the right size, shape, and function, and I can't imagine that would be done very secretively. It also should be noted that at some point Mipha would have needed to receive measurements from Link. It is unknown whether Link actively allowed her to measure him, but the fact that the armor fits perfectly cannot be ignored. It is far more likely that Mipha measured Link than having an unnaturally hawk-eyed keenness for getting the armor to form to every contour of his body. A Hylian body, no less, not a Zora's.
Mipha's diary continues to detail the events following the inauguration ceremony, but for that, we'll skip to the final memory of the Champions Ballad. There, Urbosa chats with Mipha about the Sheikah Slate's possibilities, saying, "The princess showed me something interesting the other day. The Sheikah Slate has the ability to create true-to-life images." As she does this, Urbosa head bobs interestedly, looking past Mipha in the direction of Link. Mipha then turns to Zelda and asks if she could have a special favor of her, as she then turns to look at Link herself, while the other two champions turn as well, giving an almost knowing smirk. The next shot of the champions shows them awkwardly standing together, lining up for a photograph. Our trusty and charming wingman, Daruk, notices why Mipha is so tense and decides to bring everyone, mainly Mipha and Link, closer together. In doing this, Mipha is practically falling in front of Link, and according to Mipha's diary, this action brought her closer to him. It's just after this point that Mipha is saddened by the knowledge that Link will be spending a lot more time with Zelda as her personal guard.
While not 100% canon to the events of Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity offers us more information regarding Mipha and her desires for Link. An event that would likely be placed immediately following the inauguration ceremony and just before the subdued ceremony occurs, Mipha is seen speaking with Daruk. Mipha very quickly becomes embarrassed as she was about to say that she wanted to fight alongside Link, just as Link turns to face her.
Mipha's very next diary entry is crucial. In the diary, she writes, "Finally completed that special armor for Link. I am confident it will fit him perfectly. He is coming to the domain soon. I hope to give him my gift when I see him, but should I really go through with it? According to the old legend, long ago a Zora princess fell in love with a Hylian swordsman. Perhaps there's hope. This will be a rare occasion that Link is not accompanying the princess. We should have time to ourselves. Oh, I have an idea. At sunset, I shall ride upon Ruta with Link. Zora, princess of the past, please lend me your courage." It is at this point that we know for a fact that King DOREPHAN knew of Mipha's intention. After all, this is not something Mipha would consider without a proper permission or blessing from her father. Since King DOREPHAN is recorded of, well, keeping records, it was more than likely that he told Mipha the legend of the Zora princess and the Hylian swordsman that she refers to, since this is mentioned nowhere else in the domain's cliff notes. Something that Sidon, funny enough, mentions in a conversation with Muzu is that he grew up with King DOREPHAN telling him, quote, "stories of Mipha's undying love for a Hylian named Link." Clear evidence that the king was well aware of Mipha's intentions with Link, enough to have stories to tell. We know that King DOREPHAN did not gain this information from her diary, as he mentions that it was only recently discovered after Link had cleared Vah Ruta.
The next memory featuring Link and Mipha is Mipha's touch, a memory that Link receives upon gazing at Mipha's statue, moments after receiving the Zora tunic. Remembering Mipha, Link has the most adverse reaction to a recovered memory we see in the game. Link is visibly taken aback. His face says it all. He remembered his relationship with Mipha completely. Muzu even mentions that Link is, quote, "quivering like a hatchling." And let's make no mistake, Muzu is obviously referring to a Zora hatchling, a tadpole, as shown in Majora's Mask, and man did those things quiver and wiggle. To which Link replies, "Mipha, I remember." Isn't it odd? Out of all of the memories that Link recovers, this is the only one to which he affirms that he remembers. One that he remembers, and instead of just daydreaming, he is visibly shaken. Interestingly enough, you can gaze upon the statue before speaking with King DOREPHAN and receive no memory. You can also obtain the Zora tunic and receive no memory. It is only when you have both the Zora armor and stand before the statue of Mipha that the memory is unlocked. Likely, Link wasn't remembering the armor specifically, nor Mipha alone, but that Mipha had given him the armor. We are allowed to see right up to just before the armor is given, but more on that in a bit.
A piece of information gleaned from the item description of the armor that Mipha so painstakingly crafted for her husband-to-be reads, "Armor crafted by each generation Zora princess for her future husband. Equip it to swim up waterfalls." More importantly, that very same item has a somewhat different, albeit more interesting description in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. It reads, "Custom armor, painstakingly crafted by each generation Zora princess for her future husband." It's probably fine to be wearing this. Probably. This is one of the very few armor pieces that have a changed description in Age of Calamity, but this change is more important than any other in the game. Additionally, Age of Calamity offers us an alternative take on the Zora Greaves. The quest titled Armor for Whom reads, "A client who wishes to remain anonymous has noticed his daughter staying up late into the night, crafting armor for someone. Worried for her health, he asks for a supply of energizing foods. Upon the completion of this quest, we gain the Zora Greaves for Link to wear, and the text below reads, "The client's daughter completed the armor without incident and in good health. Still, he could not help but wonder to whom she intended to give the item." The interesting thing about this side quest is that Link is not the one who receives the level up. It's Mipha. Because of this, we can be sure that she is the one working on the armor, and that the anonymous Zora father was King DOREPHAN himself. It makes sense that any parent would like to stay out of such matters, maintaining the secret, offering the player some dramatic irony. This side quest appears before the champion's inauguration ceremony, so the chronological order is not altered or interrupted, and the Zora Greaves were a gift from DOREPHAN, thanking Link for his help, and the gesture for accepting him into the family, as he later mentions. The text here indicates that Link knows for exactly what purpose Mipha is giving him the armor. In accepting the armor, he accepted the proposal that came with it. He is then able to wear the armor, but not without an internal struggle. This struggle most likely comes from his duty as a knight, as the hero, and as the one who bears the sword that can seal the darkness. As a knight, he is most likely bound to a dress code, but then again, he can run around shirtless, so the rules here are a tad fuzzy. Otherwise, this internal struggle could probably be due to the previously stressed point of the description, the custom armor painstakingly crafted by each generation Zora princess. Wearing a wedding gift to a battle doesn't sound quite responsible, even if that is how it was intended. Link may just be wary of ruining it.
While the events of Age of Calamity are vastly different from the events that lead up to the calamity that occurs in Breath of the Wild, it can be surmised that since Mipha had given Link the armor in Age of Calamity, and that he accepted it, that he did in fact have feelings for Mipha. Link's distinct reaction upon remembering Mipha's touch shows us that he had a lot of emotion behind that memory. He was visibly quivering, as noted by Muzu. While the memory fades out before we can see any indication of the armor being present, we can listen to the words Mipha is saying, which may shed some light on the event. She says, "I was thinking, this reminds me of the time we first met. You were just a reckless child, always getting yourself hurt at every turn. Every time, I would heal you, just as I'm doing right now. I thought it was funny how, being a Hylian, you looked grown up so much faster than I did. I was always willing to heal your wounds, even back then. So if this Calamity Ganon does, in fact, return, what can we really do? We just don't seem to know much about what we'll be up against. But know this, that no matter how difficult this battle might get, if anyone ever tries to do you harm, then I will heal you, no matter when or how bad the wound. I hope you know that I will always protect you. Once this whole thing is over, maybe things could go back how they used to be when we were young. You know, perhaps we could spend some time together." The memory fades out with Link staring at Mipha very intently. I don't know about you, but this entire exchange sounds an awful lot like a marriage vow. A promise to be there through thick and thin. Mipha is vowing to protect Link at all costs. Using our good old friend speculation and the evidence we have gathered from the Age of Calamity, it is more probable than not that Mipha did give Link the armor after the memory closed, after Link affirmed that he would like to spend more time with her. This time, however, Hyrule had not already fallen. This time, his duties were still to the King of Hyrule, and all chaos hadn't broken loose yet. This time, Link finds it more on the unacceptable side to wear the armor as a Knight of Hyrule, but accepts the armor and leaves it with Mipha in the domain until his duties allow him to wear the garment. Mipha would most assuredly understand that position.
The vows that Mipha declares to Link in the memory may seem out of context or ill-placed, but they fit perfectly in both the Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild timelines. The Heart's Escort side quest in Age of Calamity is unique narratively because it is her last side quest in the game. The 4 champion side quests all occur and are accessible before the 5th chapter of Age of Calamity when Mipha, Urbosa, Revali, and Daruk are imprisoned within the Divine Beasts and are forced to fight the Blights. That means that the Heart's Escort happened before Mipha met her fate at the hands of WATERBLIGHT Ganon, meaning that there could be a connection between her last diary entry and the side quests since the diary has shown parallels with her side quests before. When describing Link's upcoming visit to the domain, Mipha writes, "This is a rare occasion that Link will not be accompanying the princess. We should have some time to ourselves. Oh, I have an idea. At sunset, I shall ride upon Ruta with Link. Zora, princess of the past, please lend me your courage." Did you notice the part about riding atop Ruta at sunset? Sounds familiar? Before I continue, I should address the elephant in the room. Did Mipha give Link the armor 100 years ago? Most people say no, but remember, Link wore the champion's tunic and the knight's gear 100 years ago, and he is able to reclaim them in Breath of the Wild. So he could have had the armor at one point, but we have more convincing evidence. Mipha's diary ends shortly before the Calamity, given maybe a day or two, but that sunset on Ruta sounds familiar. If it does, I'm talking about Mipha's touch. In the memory, we see Link and Mipha riding atop Vah Ruta at sunset. Another glossed over detail is Mipha healing Link. Why is she doing so? What injured him? Age of Calamity comes in clutch once again. Sorry for stealing your line, Brasscoin. If we go by the same metric of the diary entries coinciding with side quests, Link's visit to the domain to meet with Mipha alone at sunset in Breath of the Wild concurs with Link's lone visit to the domain that resulted in him getting ambushed by a Hinox as depicted in Age of Calamity. Though the Hinox in Age of Calamity is a Malice Hinox, it's safe to assume that the Hinox in Age of Calamity is the same Hinox found by Rallis Pond, and the locations of the boss fight in both games do not lie. When Mipha goes to save Link from the Hinox, he's injured badly. What could follow next but some healing? The reward for the Heart's Escort side quest is the Zora armor, something that surprised fans who thought it would never see the light of day after she finished it. But in Age of Calamity, it did. This enlightenment aligns with the diary entry, the memory, and its vows, and the timeline.
Being from Idaho, in the United States, I can't help but draw a similarity to a fish that is found in my area, the salmon. The salmon are an anadromous fish, which means they are both freshwater and saltwater fish. They are born in the fresh waters of rivers and lakes, and as they mature, they migrate to the ocean. Remember what we mentioned about swimming up waterfalls earlier? Well, as the mating season for the salmon begins, they make their trek back to the freshwater rivers from which they were born to reproduce. Because water flows downhill from the freshwater source to the sea below, this means a long, rigorous fight up multiple waterfalls to return to their mating ground. There, they mate and their eggs are laid. But what does this all have to do with Mipha and Link? The most important benefit to the Zora armor, that neither the greaves nor the helmet offers, is the ability for Link to swim up a waterfall, an ability that Mipha wanted Link to have. This armor is made for Hylians, one, in particular, to be on par with Zora's in their swimming abilities, and perhaps, as an engagement ceremony, was an invitation for Link to swim up her waterfall, if you know what I mean.
Well, another thing to note is, after clearing Vah Ruta, Prince Sidon can be seen staring at Mipha's statue, and gives us a little more insight into Mipha and Link's time together. He says, "Actually, I recently remembered something from my childhood, a fuzzy memory from my early childhood. There was a swordsman that came by every so often and spent a considerable amount of time with Mipha. At the time, I felt like he was stealing away my sister from me. I know better now, but that swordsman, it was you, Link. I'm certain of it. I do hope my bluntness has not offended you. Had things turned out differently, you might have been my sister's husband, my brother-in-law." While this one isn't straightforward, Sidon does show that even as a child, he could see that there was something more between Link and Mipha. And as he felt that this knight was stealing his sister away from him, we can gather that it was most likely equal parts, Mipha going for Link and Link going for Mipha from Sidon's perspective, and he definitely pursued her.
Another, more informative part of the Champion's Ballad DLC can be found once again after Vah Ruta has been calmed. In a conversation with King DOREPHAN, we receive a good chunk of information. He says, "Link, she really loved you, you know. There is no mistaking that even now she is overjoyed to be able to help you. Promise me that you will always remember her. Promise me that. If you ever run into trouble, know that you are always welcome here. No matter the time, we shall greet you with open fins." King DOREPHAN continues, "As Mipha's diary plainly states, it was not long before she developed strong feelings for you. A Zora princess falling in love with a Hylian swordsman. It reminds me of a Zora legend of old. That is why I welcome the idea of you and Mipha becoming husband and wife. It is a shame you two never had the chance to see what might have been." Upon closing out the dialogue, the king says, "If you need anything, please know that I am always here for you. After all, we are practically family." This is not something you would tell to someone who never knew of Mipha's feelings for them. This is not something you would tell a friend of your child's without knowledge of the relationship being two-sided. No, this is told to Link as one who has lost a bride-to-be. This is told to Link after his memories of Mipha had returned to him, after she had been freed, and based on the context of his speech, it is very likely that Mipha had given Link the armor atop Vah Ruta as planned, and that they returned to Zora's domain shortly after to announce to King DOREPHAN that they had become engaged. At that point, they were practically family. Mipha and Link were more likely than not engaged. However, due to the events that transpired after the fateful trip to Mount Lanayru, we know that their wedding never took place.
Perhaps there is more to their relationship than we may have even discovered together. And we hope to see more of this if it is indeed true.
Perhaps in another time, such as that of the Age of Calamity, they could have been together. Or perhaps in the sequel, the champions could return after all. Regardless, there isn't a doubt in our minds that Link is real. Before and after the Calamity, that our hunk of a hero loved Mipha just as she loved him.
Thank you so much for joining us on this odyssey of a journey. I'm going to, again, thank Mr. Brasscoin here for having me on his channel. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope to maybe do some more projects with him in the future. I may be starting a channel on my own, but, well, we'll see what happens.
And thank you, Mr. GalacticThreat, for joining me in this video. It's been an honor and pleasure to work with you, and I'm glad you approached me with this idea, and we had a lot of fun building it from the ground up. So thank you once again for appearing on my channel. Guys, be sure to go and check out his channel when he makes it. A link will be in the description below to that channel when it eventually gets started. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Give it a like and a solid thumbs up if you enjoyed it, even if you are a Z-Link fan, because we all like Link here. We like Mipha and we like Zelda. So thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in another video.